to all esteemed panels, participants and guests. Welcome to the fourth parallel session for Forum Serantau Yapim 2024, Fighting Poverty and Inequality, What Can We Do More? We would like to welcome our panel to the stage, Mr. Samir Al-Sawi, Head of Islamic Development Bank, Centre of Excellence, Kuala Lumpur, Puan Herliana Naning, Program Analyst, Inclusive Growth and Prosperity, United Nations Development Programme, Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam, Mr. James Ryan Raj, Senior Fellow, Social Policies and National Integration, Institute of Strategic and International Studies, Dato' Dr. Hajar Tarzih binti Tizek Taman, Chairman, Sabah Women's Advisory Council. We would also like to welcome our moderator to the stage of this session, Dr. Suraya binti Ismail, Director of Research, Khazanah Research Institute. With pleasure, I'll pass this floor to Dr. Suraya binti Ismail to moderate the sessions. Over to you, Doctor. Testing.
Oh, there you are. Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the kind introduction. Today we have the fourth panelists with us. But before I start, let me just welcome everybody and thank you, Yapim, for inviting Kerai as moderator and all the other panelists to share on this very engaging topic we have today. Before I introduce a bit more briefly our esteemed panelists, let me just give a little bit of introduction what we will be speaking on. As you know, poverty is multidimensional. It is not just about income, but also access to shelter, food, education, and healthcare. Effective policy response can only come about when there is a proper understanding of how different deprivations emerge, interact, and perpetuate in society. One danger in advocating quote-unquote solutions is trying to draw too many experiences from other countries. Poverty exists in situ or incontextual, and its dynamics are governed largely by local elements. The other concept we'll be discussing on is inequality. Inequality is, if you think about it logically, it is perpetual. There will always be inequality in society. Its significance becomes important when the least well-off members of society are victimized, or when the well-off members have state capture. They capture the policies. The danger of speaking of inequality is that it does not take seriously the differences of history, household demographics, and culture, which then creates a different perspective of what deprivation might mean from one country to another, and it also sometimes takes away the focus on poverty. With me discussing this very interesting topic and bringing their own experiences in tackling these issues are Encik Samir Yusuf Al-Sawi. He has had several key positions at ISDB headquarters, including as Senior Wakaf Fund Specialist, Senior Country Manager for the GCC and Yemen, Egypt, Sudan, Mauritania and Libya. In these roles, he led high-level country policy dialogues and spearheaded the development of partnership strategies and member countries. Notably, he played a pivotal role in the establishment and operationalization of the Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund, serving as part of the core team driving this critical initiative. My second panelist is Ms. Helena Nanning, who is a program analyst for UNDP. Her work at UNDP spearheads social policy initiatives by supporting the government's effort to accelerate SDG goals through strengthening national social protection and improving the multidimensional poverty index. In collaboration with ILO, Helena is also leading an initiative to improve opportunities for persons with disabilities in the open labour market with enhanced social protection. CVs is more than one paragraph, yeah, but I'm just thinking the first paragraph, because these are very esteemed speakers I have with me today. Third one is James. James Ryan Raj holds a Master's in Human Capital Development from New Delhi, India. He's now appointed as the Director of the Head Secretariat Office with the All Parliamentary Group of Sustainable Development Goals since 2020. He has been involved as a community development activist for 32 years. His areas of expertise are community development and grassroots empowerment towards mobilizing marginalized communities and promoting grassroots democracy. Our last speaker is Datuk Hajah Tarziah Tizi Taman, a native of Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, and has dedicated over 35 years of her career to public service, initially as a government officer and subsequently with a government-linked company. In her retirement, she is committed to empowering women in Sabah. Her impactful leadership and dedication to social welfare extend beyond the workplace. She is a chairperson of various advisory committees, such as the Sabah Women's Advisory Council, and serve as a patron and advisor to the Million Association of Advanced Sabah Women Entrepreneurs. So the format of this discussion would be, I'll ask them, all our esteemed panelists, 3 or 2 questions, depending on the time given to us. And I'm sure you'll ask questions, so we'll give some time for questions as well. So for the first question, Mr. Samir, could you share your perspective on the current state of poverty and inequality in Muslim majority countries globally? And what do you think are the key factors contributing to these challenges?
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. At the beginning, I would like to thank YAPIM for organizing this important conference and also inviting me to participate in this session. Thank you, Dr. Suraya, and the panelists for joining us today. Now, poverty and inequality in general remains a major challenges that face a lot of OIC and global countries. If we look at numbers, you can see that based on the global multidimensional poverty index, there is around 1.1 billion people considered global poor. Out of them, around 450 million from the OIC member countries. That means that we have around 45% of global poor from OIC member countries. And if we look at those figures, you can see that means that there is a lot of countries, OIC member countries, that actually faces major challenges on poverty. We look some like economic lack of social safety net, poverty, the issue of also that faces a lot of member countries. Now, if we that means that if we economic instability as well. Now, if we look at the same countries, if you look at them before, like before the pandemic, the corona, between 2009 and until 2019, a lot of those member countries that actually have reduced their poverty trends. 26 out of the OIC member countries that actually have significantly decreased their multidimensional poverty index ratio. And countries like Bangladesh, Mauritania, Gambia, Suriname, there is a lot of member countries that actually reached a good level of reducing their poverty index. Now, unfortunately, what happened after that, after 2019, we have the COVID-19, we have food crisis issues, climate change, and you know that climate change actually hits the poorer most, since they mostly are counting on agriculture. So those challenges that happened, what they did is actually they stopped the reduction of their poverty, global poverty index. And sometimes it reversed the progress that have been made so far. Now, maybe I can add maybe another challenge to that, which is the lack of use or underutilization of the Islamic social financing. So if we look at the Islamic social financing at like, waqaf, zakah, the sadaqah, all of those factors are actually mainly targeting how you can alleviate poverty and supporting the poor. And unfortunately, a lot of countries, they don't utilize those tools in a good way that actually can support those people in need. And maybe that's maybe later, if I have time, I can give you some of the examples that the Islamic Development Bank has been doing in supporting member countries, especially on the issues on how we can use the waqaf or the Islamic social financing tools in supporting such member countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samir, as a starting point of actually looking at how we have made some progress in OIC countries, but due to the pandemic, food crisis and climate change, it has been hampered. And how do we then use some the Islamic finances, zakat, waqaf to help? We will get back to you on that. Now from the perspective for UNDP, Helena, could you share UNDP's view on multidimensional approach that's been spoken before as well by Encik Samir to poverty and how it differs from traditional income-based measures of poverty? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suraya. I also would like to take this opportunity to thanks Yapim for having us in these important discussions. So I think just now in Dr. Suraya's opening remarks and Mr. Samir mentioned poverty from multidimensional perspective. But what does this mean actually? Because in Malaysia, we always define poverty based on garis kemiskinan, which is the poverty line income kan. So we said at the specific level, we then define household is rumah ni miskin. Even when we apply, household apply for bantuan, JKM or any other governments, or in fact I think CSO, they also use PLI to define household is poverty. But I think the audience who are, I believe, have a lot of works doing poverty understand that poverty is beyond ringgit. Poverty is beyond money. Because poverty can come from different forms. For example, do not have access to school, jauh, distant to school, do not have access to healthcare, or their living standard, no clean water, or no electric supply. So for UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, we work together with Oxford Poverty Human Development Initiative, or in short, we call them OP lah. OP actually has come up with a different approach of how we can measure poverty beyond income. We call this multidimensional poverty index, MPI. So at the international level, we have been producing annually reports since 2000, global MPI. Over 100 countries, actually we call OP collect data from different countries, and then because you need to compare one country to another, right? So you need to compare apple to apple. You must have like a standard measurement, so that then we can rank which country actually the worst or the best in terms of MPI. But this global MPI, I just want to kind of also make everyone understand, Malaysia tak ada because global MPI ni mainly for countries underdeveloped. So that's why Malaysia, if you look at global MPI now, you don't see Malaysia. Because Malaysia is upper middle country. We are UMIC and soon to be high income. So most countries in the global MPI, which Mr. Samir also mentioned just now, 40% are OICs countries. Their status development is a bit lower. And global MPI is used to share indicators in terms of acute poverty. For example, access to clean water. They are the set indicators. But Malaysia, because we are very good already in terms of access of clean water, so macam kalau nak apply the same indicators, tak sesuai. Because our healthcare is universal. So if you want to put Malaysia, dia macam tak sesuai because it doesn't give us any meaning. So that's why maybe some of you who are aware, World Bank and other international organizations always give a constructive critiques that we cannot use the same indicator because the cutoff is too low, the threshold too. So global MPI, and we also have national MPI. National MPI dia sama juga dengan global MPI, but it's just that the indicators, the cutoff too, is defined by the countries. So global MPI, they have 3 dimensions: health, education, and standard of living, taraf hidup. Malaysia, kita ada 4 dimensi. The same thing, health, education, taraf hidup, dan income. So Malaysia is a bit unique. We put income as one of the indicators. Kita ada lebih kurang 11 indicators within this 4 dimension lah. So these indicators, indicators is a measure kan. So we need to define it in a way that reflect our level of development. For example, years of schooling, school attendance, distance, rumah ke hospital, access to clean water. But yeah, these are the things that we've been working with the government to improve the threshold. Because some of this threshold, like I said, is not applied anymore lah. So from UNDP, we understand and have been advocating poverty is beyond income. Because not necessarily when you have high income, that doesn't mean that you are not poor in terms of health, standard of living, or educations. Maybe I'll stop there first and then another more questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serlina. It's quite interesting that we speak of access. It's very important in measuring poverty. And it's interesting as well that you mentioned that healthcare is universal in Malaysia. I hope it will continue to be universal because there's certain proponents in Malaysia that wants it to be not universal. So let's berganting bahu to make sure that it is universal. Okay, so now we move on to someone who's actually work at the grassroots level and where you do give all this aid and help. What is the agency, the human agency of that happening at the grassroots? So my question to James, what is your perception of the role of leadership in driving sustainable development in projects, specifically involving APPGM SDG? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. And also, good morning to everyone. Selamat pagi semua, salam sejahtera. And also to all our fellow speakers and our Madam MC. And I think this is a good platform for us to discuss something that is very pertaining to our nation, development, and also I think to really understand what's happening on the ground. I just want to know, how many of you from government agencies, academics, universities? Okay, no, none from government agencies? Okay, but universities they are. Okay, you're just a bit afraid to raise your hand. but I think anyway, it's nothing against them. Just want to acknowledge their commitments and so forth in addressing poverty on the ground. But I want to give you a different perspective, what's actually happening on the ground. Probably based on the last 2 speakers, it's more, on statistics and also on multidimensional poverty. But what is actually happening on the ground, it is completely different, right? Maybe another question. How many of you lived in Kampong? I think this is more relevant. Kampong, different villages. How many of you visited the PPR flats? Okay, right. So at least there are some people, some questions that I'm asking is quite relevant. Okay, so that means, you see, why I'm saying this, because the ground reality, it is completely different. Because now Malaysia is focusing on high income nation, big economics, multinational, networking with different governments of the world to build the economy. But what is not being realized is the ground realities, what's happening. Because through APPGM, when we go to the ground, and when we meet with local people, makcik-makcik di kampung, pakcik-pakcik di kampung, the young people in the kampung, and also in PPR flats in most places, what we have found out is that the poor community whom we think needs our help and needs our support, actually they don't need. They don't need. Because we always think that we need to help them. We always think that we need to build them up. But when the poor, when you go and meet to them, they have the answers to the problem. Mereka ada jawapan to their problem. It's just that we do not want to listen to them. Kan? So young people, many young people di sini ada kan. So when you talk to your parents will always tell, listen to me, I know what is good for you. But in your heart you will think, see, my old parents don't understand what actually I'm telling. It's the same thing, there's a disengagement on the ground. So the poor knows what is best. And the poor has the resilience to overcome their conditions. And we are not tapping on their resilience. The grassroots is resilient and has the solution. What we need to know is to listen to them, to come out with a program what is good for them, and to build their capabilities and get them involved to bring the change. To bring the change. Because, you see, I don't want to talk about, all, the poverty eradication methods, all the big terminology. I think you can Google and find out all that. Can. But here, the reality is addressing poverty is not, it's not an easy, it's not a hard thing. But we are, making it so complex, can. So human beings are always like that. We make our life so difficult, but our life is meant to live well, simple and easy, not complicated. Likewise, addressing poverty. So when we go to the grassroots, meeting with the farmers are saying their inputs are so expensive. So what the government should do? Make inputs even more expensive? Make inputs cheaper. Right? When you have an issue in your health, you go and see a doctor to find solution to your issue. The doctor is not going to give you a medicine to make your issues much even greater. Likewise, when the inputs are expensive, the farmers are not able to do paddy if you go to Kedah. They are not selling their lands. The reality on the ground is so different. The inputs are expensive, they can't manage. So they are selling to big companies. So what happened? The condition doesn't change. They sell about 1,000 ringgit, 2,000 ringgit, that's it. After that, they said, the young people are not interested. They look at the father suffering so much, doing paddy field, saya tak nak susah. So they go to the bandar to work. So there are disparities are happening on the ground. You go to the fishers, like Parit Bunta. What this government is doing, state government is doing is like, removing all the mangrove. So when you remove the mangrove, what happened? The marine life, it dies. Ya ke tidak? So when the marine lives die, pertumbuhan ikan, even though Jabatan Perikanan is just putting thousands of fishes there, they're still dying. Ya ke? You don't solve the problem. You're not addressing the root cause. Don't remove the mangrove. But the funniest thing, what's happening in Paribunta, I won't mention the kawasan. They went in, kerajaan pumped in money, they wanted to bring on big company over there, and they want to do the shrimp. Pertumbuhan udang. So when you do pertumbuhan udang, who you should involve? The local communities, local fishermen. There are 70 families, none of them involved. So how are you going to eradicate poverty? But the budget is to eradicate poverty among fishermen. So why is it not happening? I don't tell the answer, you all know. So that means how you want to address it. So don't remove the mangrove. So what we are doing is we are replanting mangrove there. After when we replant the mangrove, so the local fishermen are saying now ada udang, ada, the crabs are coming, and then the fishes are coming. So simple, kan? Problem is so simple, why are we complicating it? And then telling the poor is lazy. The poor is not lazy. We are making them lazy by providing a lot of handout. That's another problem. So the element of empowering the poor, this is something that kerajaan has to learn, policymakers have to learn, CSOs have to learn, that don't disempower them. Because I said in the beginning, the poor has the ability, has the capabilities, and they have the resilience to address this. So I think I just will end this round with one thought that, if you can Google who is this thinker, Jonah Berger. So Jonah Berger is a rare thinker who blends research-based insight with practical guidance. So I'm trying to be very practical when we work with the poor, work along with them, and to address that, and then to make them to become the change agent. The change agent. Yeah, this is the different thoughts that we need to bring when we want to work with the poor. So there are completely different story on the ground. You pergi ke peninsula, different parts in rural, urban, it's a different story on the ground, different phases of poverty on the ground. You go to Sabah, you go to Sarawak, lagi is a different world over there. They don't know what you're telling. On poverty eradication, they say, please, before you talk about poverty, please give me good roads. What we do in Peninsula, I think Dato can confirm this. What we're doing in Peninsula, we cannot apply in Sabah and Sarawak because they said there's no road. How you want to do income generation there? First is you can betulkan jalan. Provide them with clean water, like what? Like if you go to Muka, people are spending 300 ringgit to buy water bottles. Can you imagine how much you all pay for water electricity, your LAP or Lembaga Air Selangor? We only pay 25 ringgit, but the poor is paying 250 ringgit. There's a water cuttle there. These are ground realities. If we don't address this, I think we cannot talk about addressing poverty. This is my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, James. This is very an important statement that James, or contextual analysis of what is really happening on the ground, and human agency, whereby some NGOs do tend to want to help in a different way, whereby that increases their relevance because they're seen to be helping the poor. If there's nobody who's in poverty, their jobs will be redundant. So there are some NGOs that behave that way, but there are some NGOs, as what James has been saying, is trying their best to understand what is happening and then to make sure that they, together with the community, helps bring agency and let the poor lead their own poverty alleviation. And I tend to agree, because I did a study as well on PPR. Most of them are working 2 jobs. There's nothing to suggest that the poor are lazy. But how do we then not look at the snapshot or the outcome, but how do we make the process better for policymakers to understand where is poverty located? And I like the point about the shrimp and the mangrove, because I think I know the GLC that did that. So it is one of those things whereby, big donors have their KPI, but they don't actually involve other members of society who are actually there. Very great insights. Now we go, and I think James bring the opening to, his closing brought an opening to, I think, Dato's role in Sabah. So Dato, if I might ask you a question. Sorry. Okay. What are the current scenarios of poverty, and what are the factors contributing to it, based on your experience?
Well, since I'm the last speaker in this row, most of the answers are there. Helena mentioned that poverty line income is not that crucial, but in Sabah scenario, it is very crucial. Money is power. Because we have to buy everything, right? We have to buy everything. We cannot produce rice. We don't have the rice fields. We can't even fish when the fishes are gone, you know. So we still need to know what's going on. So I'm here as a representative from the Sabah state government, but of course I'm more in charge of the women in Sabah. But in terms of poverty, the poverty line income in Malaysia is, I read out the data, is 2,589 ringgit. But in Sabah, the PLI is 2,742 ringgit, which is higher, almost 180 ringgit higher. We need more money to make sure that we are not in the poverty line. And we are the second highest in Malaysia. Now, in terms of ethnics, I don't have the data for Sabah. I'll go into Malaysia. In Malaysia, Bumi Putras, 7.9% in the poverty line. Chinese, only 1.9%. And Indians, 5.4%. Now, when talking into economic terms, the Gini coefficient on household gross income, Malaysia has 0.404, the coefficient, which is already been reduced from 2019, which is 0.407. But it is still less than half of the 1.0 coefficient. So where are we in Malaysia? We are still in the developing side, okay? Again, I want to stress here, when you say Kuala Lumpur to Kota Kinabalu, the disparity is very, very glaring. We are like 30 years behind. Yeah, I look all right because I always go to Kuala Lumpur. But if you go down to the suburb or even the rural areas in Kota Kinabalu, just 30 miles away or 30 kilometers away, there's a difference between Kota Kinabalu and Tuaran. There is already a difference. Now, when you don't have the income, it's getting worse because everything has to be purchased. Let me go through again the monthly household gross income per capita. This is 2022 data, yeah? Malaysia as a whole has 13,210. Sabah baru 10,000, 10,225, which is about 3,000 difference. That's 30 years, 3,000. In the urban in Malaysia, urban area, Kuala Lumpur, especially the highest, 14,685. In the rural, only 5,000. You mentioned the PPR, the rural areas. The Bumi Putra now, the gross income per capita is only 10,000. The Chinese, 18,000. I mean, I just round up. And the Indian, not too bad, 14,000. So, what are the factors contributing to the poverty in Malaysia? The first one is inflation. We may not realize it. We are always facing inflation. The moment gaji naik, kerajaan gaji naik, minyak naik, beras naik, susu naik, they went up. The household products went up just because the government raised 5% on their salary. Where are we? We can never correlate with the pay rise, right? The inflation. Then the unemployment. Then I'm talking into Sabah. I was the CEO of a GLC, developing an industrial park for the state government of Sabah. I was supposed to create 10,000 jobs within 10 years. I couldn't. The economy cannot do it because we are not industrialized. We are now going into agriculture, back to agriculture. But yet, where are the land being sold? Already sold. The poor people go and sell their land But then again, they're still poor, even after selling the land. The unemployment is worse. We have thousands of graduates. In Sabah, we have several universities. Yet, if you produce 20,000 a year, the job is only maybe less than 1,000. I was told by the chairperson of the Sabah employment, when a post is empty, vacant, even the graduates, a degree, masters apply for the clerk job. So the SPM, the Form 5 school leavers, are competing with these graduates. And the graduates, maaf ya, for the youngsters, they lie about their qualification just to get the lower job because they couldn't get the job when they are graduates. So the economic growth is very, very important. This is what the government has to play a role, like investment, business advisory, flexible fundings, okay? And just now, Helena mentioned academic and skill qualification. Whatever you do, janganlah biarkan anak-anak kita tidak ada education or skills. Sekarang ni, now, the trend is Form 5 pun tak, banyak yang tak go for Form 5. Right? Because content creator konon nak jadi influencer, very easy. And they earn a lot of money. But can they sustain it without the academic or skill qualification? So we went through, I am much older than all of you. I went through all this. I have to go through my education, went overseas, do my PhD, just to make sure I held a CEO job. For women, it's worse. I have to compete with the men. So, and the worst part is unequal wages. The gender gap is glaring, right? We were not given the peluang and ruang, opportunities. We are not given for women. And when we get that post, I was paid as a CEO like 10,000 ringgit lower than my predecessor. What happened? And I am a PhD student, and he was only an MBA student. Oh, come on. I mean, that's the reality. So that's all I share for this, Madam. I can blah, blah.
Thank you, Dato'. That was very fiery indeed. Well done. But I like the fact that you mentioned a lot of the youth now are basically underemployment. You have a degree, and yet the jobs created by the economy is not as sophisticated. We actually saw that trend as well in the whole of the nation, where there is a wage stagnation for some jobs and created in our country. So it is underemployment, and unemployment is a function of the economy, not the higher education. So our economy needs to thrive. However, I think one of the things we did was we deindustrialized without getting rich. Cepat sangat, kan? And then we went to services. And as you know, services F&B is not so great in terms of payment. So these are all very, very difficult times for the youth. Is it because us making such bad policies before? It's also good to understand and have self-reflection of what we did. Then we can go back to Encik Samir, of all that you've done before in other countries, knowing the baselines given by all our panelists. Could you highlight some of the successful programs or initiatives from the ISDB that have effectively addressed poverty and inequality? And what is it that we can then learn from your experiences you can apply to our local context?
Thank you. I think many points have been raised by the panelists. That's very important, and maybe I will highlight some of them during the discussion. Of course, tackling poverty and building resilience for the ISDP member countries is one of the main priorities and pillars under the strategy of the Islamic Development Bank.
No, I close.
So the Islamic Development Bank actually launched many initiatives that actually tackle poverty. Maybe I'll mention a couple of them. The first example I can give is the ISFD, which is the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development. And this fund is a specialized fund that main objective is tackling poverty for ISDP member countries through different initiatives and programs. Of course, the concept is how we can use Islamic social finance, as I mentioned earlier, like Waqf, in order to support our communities. So the idea is that we use the Waqf under the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, and the income generated from this Waqf will be used to support poverty in different member countries. Of course, we can tackle, education, as mentioned, health, economic empowerment, and women empowerment as well. So all areas that can tackle poverty can be used the income. And this shows that you can use the Waqf example to provide sustainable, actually, income and projects that we can use to the poor. And this will be, of course, under the ISFD, we have another program implemented also by the bank. It's called Tadamun. And Tadamun, in English, it's solidarity. It's an Arabic word, and it's in English, it means more of solidarity. And in the Tadamun, we use that, and that will hit actually on the points mentioned by James, which is the communities, is how we can use the Islamic social financing and the social engagement together in order to use it as a powerful tool to address poverty. And the objective of the Tadamun is how we can empower the NGOs and the CSOs in order to be able to improve the social economic living of their communities. And of course, under the Tadamun, even during the pandemic alone, we have been able to support more than 700,000 people. And we have done resource mobilization through crowdfunding platforms specifically for this, which is, I think, mobilized around $2 million US. So that shows that actually using the Islamic social innovation, like crowdfunding platforms, can be able to support member countries in fighting poverty. Now, maybe I'll highlight the point that mentioned by James, which is very important, which is how you can use the local actors like NGOs and CSOs, because they are the ones that actually are on the ground. And they know exactly the needs of the people, and they are the ones that actually can design and tailor the program in order to reach an impactful results. So who can know more about the people rather than those local actors? So it's difficult to bring someone from the outside and try to design a program while you have social actors actually like NGOs and CSOs. So the idea is how you can empower those NGOs and CSOs, provide them with the capacity building, line of financing in order to scale up their current projects that they are doing, and that will actually bring more impactful results and sustainable solutions. Of course, we can talk even more about this, but maybe I'll give another example on another of the initiatives and the programs that the bank is doing, which is called LLF, which is the Live and Livelihood Fund. And this Live and Livelihood Fund show that you can do more through partnerships. And the whole concept is that it's targeting poverty, LDMCs, least developed member countries, and how you can help them into this poverty alleviation through main sectors, especially on agriculture. But the concept is you can provide, it's a blended financing So you can combine grant resources with ordinary financing, and you can combine both in order to be able to provide concessional financing to the least developed member countries. That means it's a lower cost for them that they can actually afford and they can actually use in order to build their work on different areas like education and health and all of that. So maybe I can highlight maybe two, as you mentioned, maybe lessons learned or things that we can use as an outcome of such initiatives and programs that the Islamic Development Bank is doing. The first one is that collaborating with local communities is very essential for success. That initiatives that involves the local stakeholders can actually achieve better results and impactful results more. That's one. The second one is how you can leverage and use the Islamic social financing tools like the waqf, the zakah, and the sadaqah, which can provide more sustainable solutions, not only in the short term in fighting poverty, but more on a longer term that can provide more of the sustainable solutions. So trying to use those specific tools that we have in the Islam, but we need to be able to use them more in a more of a systematic and programmatic manners that can actually be more sustainable and long-term solutions for our unprivileged communities and poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sami. That's very, very interesting on ensuring that the funds of the bank goes to the right people and to ensure that it has built-in capacity for local agency. And I like the fact that we are doing this in a systematic way, programmatic way with the local actors. I think that is really a sustainable process and something we can emulate here in Malaysia. I'm mindful of the time, so I'll go straight to Helena on the second question. In addressing regional inequalities and vulnerable groups, how can governments and policymakers use this MPI to design more effective poverty reduction strategies?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Saria. So just now I mentioned two things, right? Global MPI and national MPI. So Malaysia has national MPI since 2005, 2006 during the midterm of 11 Malaysia Plan. That was, I think, the first time it was mentioned. So like global MPI is kind of set, while the national can be influenced by the local setting. So just want to kind of share, like UNDP now currently supporting the government to revise this national MPI because, like I said, the cutoff was very low. It's not reflecting the situations in Malaysia. So just now a lot of esteemed panelists talking about local voice, right? The importance of working with the community. So in revising this national MPI, we actually has been going around because what the beauty of MPI ni, we have a component we call the voice of the poor. So last year we went to Sabah, we went to Sempurna, in fact, we went to Kota Belud, was it KB? Yeah, we went to Kelantan, Kedah, and of course some in the urban poor at the PPR, because we really want this national MPI indicators informed by the people of the poor. Yeah, because maybe for the government, poverty means distant to school, but for the poor, it's beyond that. Like what Datuk mentioned just now, is probably something else. So when we went meet these poor people at the different setting, what esteemed panelists mentioned is very true. What the poor in Sabah, especially Sempurna, people in Sempurna, poverty for them is different than what the urban poor in KL are defining. It's very different. So actually the team had quite a tough job. Sebab when we talk about national, it's usually average. They kena average. So that's why I think it's still ongoing, but also thanks to APPGM SDG because also they have been our partners in this. Yasan Hasana as well, and KRI, yeah, Puan Hawa and the team. Because it's not just voice of the poor, but also from the academia, think tank, beside the governments. We want to have like consolidated what everyone think what poverty is, because we really want the MPI to be useful for policy making. Because in other countries, MPIs has been used, if I can say three things. One, of course, policy making, but how? Sebab indicators, if we say poverty is defined by school of attendance, for example, yeah, and then the government can then identify which, one more beauty things about MPI, yeah, they can zoom in which area, which sub-district yang ada this deprivation. For example, with the data they collect, we can then identify which are the household are the most deprived, and therefore the budget allocation can be informed, or we can have a design intervention that is addressed to this deprivation. So that is the beauty of MPI. So yes, policy making in terms of budget allocations, number one. Number two, MPI is very good for policy making too sebab it's holistic. I think that one everyone would agree, because it's beyond income. It's looking at different dimensions of poverty. And the third one, I would say it's organically forced coordination. If the government will take this as a measure of understanding poverty, because the different agencies, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, they have to work together. It's like an integrated response that kind of force the government respond. It cannot be just unidimensional in addressing poverty and disparity. So I think in short, yeah, these three things, how MPI, national MPI, is actually quite useful. It's informed through the grassroots and also by the different stakeholders. And last but not least, sorry, yeah, one more thing that I forgot. MPI is the data collected through the household income by DOSM. And DOSM collect this data like every 2.5 years. So kalau kita collect this data regularly, we can track progress. So we can track progress over time. Okay, this year MPI, this is how it looked like. And deprivation are this area. And the following reports year, we can then see how we progress, ada turun atau tidak. Therefore, it's quite powerful in terms of a measure of poverty beyond income. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm cognizant of the fact that you're putting up 10 minutes. So James and Dato, if you, because we want to give time for Q&A as well. So if James, what would you like to say in 5 minutes? How many minutes? Five, okay. 5 or 3, maybe 3. Sorry, and
right.
Dato 3 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I think to address poverty, I think most important is in every area when we go in to do good work, we need to identify a community catalyst, a catalyst that we need to identify. Either it is in a rural community or in an urban community or in a particular area that we are actually entering to do some good work. As I said earlier, the good work should be empower the community and not to disempower the community. The poor has the skills, has the capabilities, has the resources as well. What is within that particular location, the resources available? I think sometimes we feel that to move them out from that poverty, to move them from the location, put them in a better condition, actually it's not helping. Because the people are tied with the land. The people are tied with the social, cultural, and economic of that particular community. Like for example, the Sabahans, and also the Sarawakians, or even the Orang Asli community, or even the Indian community, or even the rural community. They have the social, cultural ties. So based on understanding that, we need to develop community catalysts. And as what the earlier speakers have mentioned, that also to identify what is actually good for them and how they can address it within the resources that they have. But then applying the principle of community-based approach. This is what APPGM is doing. That means when we go there, our approach towards addressing poverty is completely a new paradigm shift. And looking even at models in India, social financing, like also you have mentioned, social financing, mutual trust, funding and all that, helping rural Indians, rural communities in India using mutual benefit trust, MBT, mutual benefit trust that run by women. And they have set up a own trust by, having from 1 rupee, now they have about 1.2 crores. It is raised by the poor. So we cannot say the poor cannot actually change the condition. And the poor has no money to change the condition. With 1 rupee, now they have about more than 10 million crores run by the women. So they have dairy farms. Even we are looking at, the models of HomeNet, home-based workers in Thailand is run by women. In Philippines, home-based net run by women, how they bring about a social change. So I think social financing has to also play a key role in addressing this poverty. I think the Islamic financing, I feel that, they have good ways of actually providing funds to eradicate poverty. I think if they can come together to provide easy financing to help the poor to build their economy through micro business and opportunities, like through what we are doing now, through the income generation project, helping young people, helping poor women to set up their own group, financing them, running the projects, how they can set up cooperatives, and they apply the social solidarity economy principle. That means above profit, it's people. It is, democratic governance. It is a corporate responsibility of within, the dynamics of the committees that is involved, in addressing poverty. So these are some of the principles that actually government should approach, in addressing. In Manila, they are doing this. In Manila, Philippines, the local governance is applying the SEC principle in looking into empowering the local communities in addressing poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'll try to read in under 1 minute. Okay. Now, if we want to eradicate poverty, I can only conclude that there are 2 broad types of strategies. That is, you need an expansion of sustainable economy. Everything comes with economy. Secondly, since we are a government run, we need government run affirmative action. Affirmative actions, especially those who are targeted to the poor. And right now, I think everywhere in Malaysia, the social enterprises are growing. These are the community-based. Yeah, instead of making them to become entrepreneur outright, they can be run by a community. This is a social enterprise. And in federal government, the Malaysia Madani, that's a new concept, which is inclusive, compassionate, helping those to make sure that we have a standard all across the board. In Sabah, we also have the program Sabah Maju Jaya. Which we focus on 3 pillars: tourism, industrialization. Those are the things that we need to address. In my organization, I have introduced 2 iconic projects targeting for young women. One, in the broad base of economy, we are trying to create these young women entrepreneurs. Instead of looking for employment after they graduates, they become job creators or game changers. These are the women that we target them to become entrepreneurs who can go forward and become millionaires, not in terms of profit, but can sell more than 1 million ringgit per year. And I am proud to say, in 3-4 years' time, we already have 8 of them. One of them has already reached 5 million ringgit annual sales. doing confinement home saja. Rumah bidan, rumah apa tu? After giving birth, during the pandemic, she was making a lot of money. So many people giving birth during the pandemic, and they could not go to the hospital. They need this house, confinement homes. Okay, so another program that we did is the Leadership Academy, Women Leadership Academy. I call it Akwan, Akademi Kepemimpinan Wanita Sabah. These are also targeted at young women between the age of 20 to 45 years old, because we want them to be the voice of the women. So bear in mind that we always say we want the 30% target for the women. We said more than 30%. Let the ceiling do not become concrete. We don't even want glass. Let it be open, the ceiling. Let the floor, no glue. Do not stick your shoes on the carpet because you cannot go up. Women are being deprived. This is what we call the opportunities that we have to create. So we in Sabah Women Advisory Council are doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Datuk. So do we have time for Q&A? No, we don't have time for Q&A. Sorry, guys. So if you could just bring a round of applause to all the panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, no conclusion as well.